Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson, and welcome to Conversations. Today, we are joined by Dr. Ayesha Tabassum, who recently completed her PhD in Human Resource Management at York University. We will be discussing her research on the Telework Paradox, exploring how the demands of working from home can either stifle or stimulate innovation. Ayesha, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's also thank you for inviting into the session, and I'm really happy to share my research findings in terms of my dissertation. So it's a wonderful opportunity.
Aisha, the pandemic fundamentally shifted the landscape of work, and now we see this tension in the headlines every day. Many companies are mandating return to office policies because they fear remote work kills innovation. Based on your research, why do you think there is such a massive disconnect between what business leaders believe and what employees are experiencing?
Thank you for your question. That's actually a very timely and also a very interesting question that I deal almost every day whenever I talk with people and I share my dissertation finding. Specifically, the topic itself is very much timely and also debatable at the same time. So what I have seen specifically when I conducted my literature review and also when I collected data for my research, this was really interesting to see that how there is a major gap between these two parties, the employers and the employees. So on one hand, research suggests that working from home or specifically telework or whatever the format is here, it's advantageous for the employees because it can provide you so many types of benefits. Most importantly, it provides you with autonomy, with flexibility that you can make your own decision how to perform a task and if you know when to perform, with whom to perform. So you have a lot of freedom here, right? And also this is a great opportunity for performing deep work that you can fully concentrate into your work, and then you can utilize all of your time that you actually have to work from home, which is you can not only have the concentration but also it's a platform for distraction free work. So that's the greatest advantage, right? Also at the same time, it's like you do not need to commute to the work, so which is another major benefit, that you can save the commute time. You can actually save some of your energy to actually do some real work from home. Okay, so these are some employee is perspective oriented benefit, that the employees think that these are the major benefits and that's why I should work from home, I shouldn't go to the office. But on the other hand, the leader's perspective is very much different. So they mainly focus, which is also one of the concern of my dissertation research as well, that if collaboration is getting hampered or not. So the leaders or the managers think that if you do not go to the office, if you are not in the in-person environment, which means that that is significantly influencing your collaboration, affecting your collaboration capabilities. Okay. Also, they are concerned that this is probably was the part of the organizational culture at the same time. Like if we look back to the time before pandemic, that employees used to go to the work, they used to chit chat with each other, and then there was also this concept of cross-functional collaboration, interdepartmental collaboration. And now because they're working from home, the managers think that there is less opportunity, even if they are using the virtual tools, but still there are less opportunity for collaboration, which in research we of course see a different scenario. We see that no collaboration is possible because virtual collaboration has been there for many years now. With the rise of internet technology, like in 90s, we all started actually collaborating virtually or in a remote context. So telework was there. Eventually, it was there, like even 20 years back, right?
Mm.
So people have started that. People have started to embrace that and identify the major benefits. So many organizations gradually started with telework. But then because of this shift in the because of the pandemic, actually all of us probably started doing telework, which is very different. because it was a crisis induced telework and we were not prepared for this. And that's why there were a lot of hiccups at the beginning. And then eventually the employees started to adopt with this. But the problem is that when the employees were adopting and when the employees were really habituated or when they were really comfortable to work from home and when they realized that yes, there are significant amount of benefits over going to the office, right at that point, the employers started to call back to the office. So that's obviously a very important source of conflict here we can see, which can significantly affect the productivity, the performance. So that was one of the triggering point or the starting point of my dissertation research, that why is this happening, and then does it actually affect collaboration, does it actually affect innovation or not. So that's the fundamental difference between the thought process of the leaders versus the employees.
So it sounds like we might be looking at innovation through two different lenses. Aisha, you define individual innovative behavior not just as having a good idea, but as the intentional promotion of those ideas in a remote setting. Where is the friction point that typically stop a great idea from becoming a reality?
Mhm. That's actually also a very good concern here, that we
Mm,
see that how the innovation is getting affected and how this is so much different in the context of remote work, right? So because when we talk about innovation in in-person environment, that's pretty much easy, right? That you
mm,
can talk to your colleagues, you can just maybe meet in the next room. Probably you may have a boardroom booked where you can sit with your whole team, you can do your brainstorming, like all sorts of idea generation, idea promotion, and also idea implementation. Everything is possible at the same time, at the same environment. But when you are in a remote work environment, here this idea of innovation or innovative behavior, which was the major concern in my research, is slightly different, because here we are not collaborating in person environment, we are collaborating virtually, where the technology plays a very unique role here, and also a very important role. I would say that
mm,
without technology, this kind of
mm,
collaboration is not possible. Even if you are involved in brainstorming with your colleagues, if you want to sit with your peers or team members, you need those technologies, or otherwise you
mm,
cannot do that. But there's a slight difference here also in terms of understanding that how innovation works when it comes to the concept of individuals, that how do the individuals engage into innovative behavior. So when they are working from remote environment, it's not necessary that they will have to really sit with their colleagues. Like this innovative idea generation can take place anywhere. It's just outside of the work.
mm,
Maybe that is in my home. Maybe I
mm,
am walking outside, or maybe I'm doing gardening, or maybe I'm
mm,
traveling somewhere.
mm,
But this idea generation, this concept of idea generation is like about constant thinking, right? That our thought process can trigger it anytime, anywhere. It really doesn't matter where you are and what you are doing. So, in that sense, this kind of idea generation in the context of remote work is very much different. But when you are actually working in person, you are literally sitting either in front of your laptop or maybe,
yeah,
with your colleagues to share those ideas. But here it's
mm,
different.
mm,
And most importantly, this is something we nowadays we call like distributed ideation. Like, like
mm,
you are not in a central location. Your colleagues are also distributed in different geographic location. But
mm,
still you can connect with them. You can
mm,
actually share your idea. They can also share their ideas.
mm,
And then you can actually come to a conclusion, right? So this decentralized execution, implementation, execution, and also idea generation kind of concept really helps here, or really contributes here in terms of defining innovative behavior in a very different manner compared
mm,
to the in-person context. And
mm,
also here is this idea of like that I always say that when we are in the remote work context, that this concept of innovation is actually intentional design of digital work system, which is
mm,
not in case of the in-person idea generation or
mm,
in-person
mm,
innovative context, right? That's
mm,
very much different there.
mm. So to understand that friction, you had to look beyond the traditional office boundaries. Uh,
Mhm.
Aisha, your research uses the job demands and resources model, but extends it to include non-work factors. Why was it essential to include things like household chores or
Mhm.
family interruptions when looking at professional innovation?
Thank you. So that's also, a question that I get very often.
Mm,
That why did you bring JDR model? Because JDR model is a very popular theory, one of the highest cited theory, and then challenging the JDR model is really also challenging for me. Like I cannot really just come and say that okay, so
yeah,
there are some limitations.
yeah.
But here this my idea was that it's not about challenging, but it's about looking from the perspective of remote work, that how
Mm,
this environment of remote work is very much different compared to the in-person work environment. So JDN model was initially offered for the in-person environment, the traditional co-located work environment where everyone will be in the office, and then they are experiencing some sort of negative factors in their jobs which are considered as demands, and some positive factors which are actually supporting them, which are considered as resources. So how do these resources and demands interplay with each other, and what are the outcomes? So that was the initial idea of JDR model. But
mm,
then what we miss is this telework component, or is this remote work component, which I started thinking when the pandemic started. And in fact at that time I didn't even start to work on my dissertation because at that time I was on my coursework.
mm,
And then when I was reading this JDR model, the first question that came to my mind is that, okay, so what happens now, because we are now working from home, because
mm,
this is not the same geographic location, this is not the same team members,
mm,
probably this is not
mm,
the same way we are collaborating. So what happens to the demands and resources? And then when I started digging in, I see that, okay, so the name of the theory essentially is job demands and resources. It
mm,
doesn't include the non-job or like non-work oriented components, that we know
mm,
that there are various other factors. And that's why we have this concept of work-life balance, right? That
mm,
because the other factors can actually significantly affect our work life. So what happens in case of remote work is that your work is not separated with the non-work factor. So that is
mm,
the most important thing here,
mm,
that there's a constant interaction with the non-work environment. Even if you
mm.
do not want, you'll have to get involved with the non-work factors, right? For example, now
Yeah,
both you and I are actually sitting in a virtual environment,
yeah,
maybe from our home, right?
yeah,
So I'm sitting from my bedroom because my office is in my bedroom. Okay. So for some people, it can be in the kitchen, right? For some
yeah,
people, it can be with the kids, like where
yeah,
the kids are actually playing,
yeah,
probably, or
yeah.
maybe their partners are working behind. So
Mm,
so these all non-work related variables. Okay, so maybe it happens that, like when I was actually interviewing my participants, when I was
mm,
talking with them, that how
mm,
these non-work factors
mm,
influence them. So
mm,
there were like various examples
mm,
beside this, that it's not only about the
mm,
family related factors, but it can be your personal health. It can be
mm,
your physical health, your mental health. It
mm,
can be, other various other concerns like the social factors,
mm,
probably, that you have your friends, you have your
mm,
extended family, you
mm,
may have parents to take care of, right?
mm,
You may have other social responsibilities as human
mm.
beings. So
Yeah.
all of these to some extent influence what you
Mm,
do at your work, and to
yeah.
what extent you
Mm,
perform at your work. And that's why
yeah.
including the non-work factors are
Mm,
important,
yeah.
specifically in the context of
Yeah.
remote work
Yeah.
context.
Absolutely. It's work doesn't happen in vacuum, and it really changed the definition of work. Uh,
Yeah.
it's a more holistic way of looking at workers' day. But
Mhm.
to prove this, you actually had to build a new way to measure these experiences. Aisha, you developed a new skills to measure telework demands and telework resources. What were the most common physical or psychological demands reported by the teleworkers you interviewed?
Thank you. Um, yes, I developed two new skills here because the original JDR model that only involves the job-related demands and resources were not sufficient to conduct the empirical study in my research. So what I did is that I developed the skills for telework demands and telework resources. And through the process of skill development and validation, I actually went through various kinds of demands and resources. So I actually started with lots of items, like hundreds of items. In total, I had 188 items, and then I narrowed it down through the validation process, and where the scale came up to 15 items. But then when I was going through these items, some of these items were like very common that we have seen in the literature, right? That what are the benefits of telework, or maybe what are the drawbacks of telework, that people work in isolation, people have issues in terms of collaboration, in terms of communication, there might be miscommunication. And in fact, there is lack of networking opportunity, there is lack of social interaction opportunity, you cannot mingle with your colleagues and all this stuff. So these are like some common demands that we usually see and read frequently in the research, right? But apart from that, there were some, emerging kind of demands, specifically about which we recently started talking, that what are the emotional components of these demands specifically, that how do the employees deal with the emotion related to working from home, because when you talk about isolation, that you are working in a very lonely environment without an interaction, then does this affect your mental health? And then, if that affects your mental health, what are the outcomes specifically, and how do you regulate or cope up with that specific situation? So there were several, examples when I was interviewing to develop the scale items specifically. So some of the participants actually talked about this emotional component of demands, which is and I wouldn't say that this is a new concept or surprising concept, but then we do not talk a lot in the literature about that, because we primarily focus on the productivity, we primarily focus on that what's happening in terms of the performance outcomes, like how does it impact the organizational outcomes, right? So that's the major concern at the end of the day. But what's happening on the part of the employees, that is something also we should take care of, if we are concerned about employee well-being, right?
Yeah. So it seems those demands don't just affect the individual, they
Hmm.
ripple out into how we work together.
Yeah.
Uh, Aisha, your conceptual collaboration was an emergent process.
Hmm.
How does the lack of nonverbal cues and social presence in virtual environments hinder the way employees collaborate on complex tasks?
Hmm. Thank you for your question. So collaboration is definitely an emergent process here, but as I mentioned earlier, that virtual collaboration is different compared to the in-person
Mm,
collaboration. And because
mm,
this is the context of remote work, we are
mm,
considering virtual collaboration, which is also an emergent process. And why is this emergent process? Because this is inherently a bottom-up approach, that we would say that the organization definitely takes some initiative, like the leaders or our managers can say that, okay, so these are the people that you will collaborate with.
mm,
But then how do we collaborate? We decide that, right?
mm,
And in fact, we also decide whom should we collaborate, because although my manager says that I should talk with these people, but then beyond that, there might be some situation in my job where I
mm,
actually need to communicate or interact with some other people from other department, right?
mm,
So which means that collaboration is not only limited in terms of top-down approach, rather than the employees are now working in a reactive manner, proactive manner, instead of being reactive, that there will be a problem and then I will drive into that and then I will start collaborating. It's not like that
mm,
nowadays. People start collaboration even before a problem arises, or specifically they try to predict,
mm,
like, what can be the future problems and how would we solve that if there is
mm,
an issue.
mm,
So because of this proactive approach, and also because this is a bottom up approach, this process of collaboration is definitely emergent. And
mm,
also, there is an important aspect that I would like to add is that the non-linear nature of collaboration, that collaboration related outcomes are not anymore linear nowadays.
mm,
Even in fact, we have seen in the research there is a greater amount of reciprocal
mm,
interdependence between the colleagues, between the team members, and in fact, in terms of cross-functional context, that there is so much interdependence that the outcomes actually become the relationship pattern actually become very much non-linear,
mm,
and also people collaborate based on various factors here.
mm,
That's another concern here, that people do not only collaborate because they have to collaborate.
mm,
Here, the idea is that we collaborate because collaboration is sometimes also about relationship.
mm,
That through collaboration we build
mm,
relationships, and also because we have some previous relationships, and that's why we do collaborate effectively.
mm,
It's also about trust.
mm,
It's also about how much resources are available, right, in terms of collaboration. For example, if
mm,
the organization is providing you the technological platforms to collaborate or not, because those are crucial for virtual collaboration.
mm, mm,
Also, the goals, like what are the goals of collaboration? What are the outcomes of collaboration? So
mm,
there are various factors that together decide like why would people collaborate, in
mm,
which environment they would collaborate, and what will be the outcomes of collaboration. And that's why considering all these factors, specifically in a very unique environment like telework, becomes also very challenging from the
mm.
traditional context. And we
Yeah.
need to bring all these variables together to understand.
So it's clear that collaboration is the bridge to innovation.
Mhm.
Naturally, one would think more resources always lead to better results, but your data shows a surprising curve. You found that telework resources can sometimes exhibit a too much of a good thing effect. Can
Mhm.
you explain how having too many resources might actually backfire for a remote worker?
Thank you. So yes, that's the most interesting finding that I had in my research, because the JDR model says that demands are inherently negative and resources are positive. So which means that if you have demands, you must
Mm,
have some resources to eventually deal with the negative effect of the demands, right?
mm, mm,
So in my research, I found that yes, the demands which arise in the context of telework are
mm,
negative. They are negatively affecting or hampering the collaboration and also the innovative behavior. But on the other hand, I didn't find any positive relationship between resources and collaboration and innovation.
mm,
Now, this is what may happen. This is just my prediction. Is that here that because we have also seen in previous research that resources, although JDR model says that resources are positive, but it's not necessary that you will always be able to utilize the benefits of the resources. So
mm,
there might be the resources, you have abundant amount of resources, but if they are not useful to some extent, or maybe you have some kind of situation, you have some kind of issues which are not actually somehow manageable with those resources. So this is what I consider as the lack of fit between demands and resources.
mm,
That you have some kind of demands in your job, but then you also have some kinds of resources, but then these resources are not adequate to deal with the demands, because there are differences between the patterns between the types of demands or the resources. So for example, you have some work related demands, but you have some non-work related resources. So for example, you are having issues or problems in terms of collaboration with your colleagues, which is solely a work related issue. It
mm,
has nothing to do with the non-work or family related variables, right?
mm, mm,
But on the other hand, now you have resources, something like this, that your partner is very supportive.
mm,
Now that is a resource, definitely, that your partner understand that what's your work responsibility, how long do you work. So they make sure that there is no interference between your work and non-work related aspects, which is a very good thing. definitely a very good resource for increasing productivity. But also the question is that if that resource is helping me to deal with this demand of collaboration, because it
Mm,
has nothing to do with collaboration, unless I get some resources to deal with that specific type of demand.
mm,
So that's what happened in case of my research, that when I looked back at the demands and resources item from the measurement scale, what I found is that the demands which have been finalized were very much work related demands, but on the other hand the resources were very much non-work related resources. So there is a mismatch clearly, so we need to ensure that demands and resources fit with each other or match with each other, or otherwise having resources is not a very useful idea.
mm. So that's a counterintuitive finding that
Yes.
managers really need to hear. It suggests that the amount of remote work matters as much as the tools provided.
Mhm.
Uh, Aisha, your research found that resources become particularly valuable when telework intensity is high. Does this suggest that hybrid workers and fully remote workers require different types of support from their managers?
Uh, they do actually. It depends like what kind of environment we are working in nowadays.
Mm,
It's mostly hybrid kind of environment
mm,
because people are maybe going to office for 3 days or 2 days or 4 days in some cases. So in case of hybrid environment, the support system that is required is very much different compared to a fully remote work environment versus a fully in-person work
mm,
environment. Okay, so in
mm,
my research, I found that telework intensity is a very important variable, which is like how many hours do you telework? So
mm,
what I found is that resources can become significantly useful when you work for a longer hours, when you
mm,
work for longer amount of telework. So for
mm,
example, if you are working more than 40 hours, so in my case I found that telework hours were about 45 hours, like more than 45 hours. Like if
mm,
you work more than 45 hours in a week, in that case, you can actually have the benefits of telework. But
mm,
now the question is that what happens when this is hybrid work? Because in case of hybrid work, maybe it might be 20 hours of telework or maybe 30 hours of telework. So in that case, are the resources working well or not?
mm,
Yes, the resources may not work well. And another concern that I frequently talk about is that when this is hybrid, we also have this shift or movement between the environments, that you are working 2 days from the office and 2 days from home. So you need, every time you are making the shifts from office to home, home to office, also that creates some sort of imbalance here, and that takes some of your energy. So that might be an energy depleting process,
mm,
which might be
mm,
resource draining process, that you
mm,
may need some additional resources here to eventually make these movements and shifts. Okay,
mm,
so that's why hybrid might be, although the leaders think that hybrid is a good idea, but also at the same time they need to provide support in terms
mm,
of these shifts between one environment to another.
mm. So it really highlights that one size does not fit at all.
For all, yeah,
So,
definitely, yes.
so Aicha, since telework demands can hinder both collaboration and innovation, what is the most taxing demand a manager should try to remove from their team's plate immediately?
It's difficult to say because, again, as you just mentioned, that one size doesn't fit all, right? So one
Mm,
specific type of policy may not actually fit all. That's the first
mm,
thing that we
mm,
should keep in mind. So I am actually, I have, I mean, like when
mm,
when I was actually looking for the literature for
mm,
my dissertation at the time, I also developed another paper which is solely on the literature review of Telework Paradox. And then there I found that yes, like because Telework Paradox is a very complicated concept, and then also it is not possible to have the specific factors. Just we cannot just identify that, okay, so these are the 5 factors, which can resolve the paradox. Now that's not possible because the personal contexts are different, personal experience are different, the organizational environment is different, your leaders, your managers are different. So there are these organizational factors, personal factors, the environmental factors, which are all together
mm,
creating this kind of situation, either demands or resources. So because my research is concerned about collaboration
mm,
and innovation.
mm,
So if you ask me to pick one, I would probably say that yes, then the managers probably need to go first to
mm,
identify
mm,
the collaboration related demands, that what's
mm,
happening in terms of collaboration in a team and what they
mm,
can do to support their employees to collaborate more.
mm. Well, this is such a practical takeaway for leadership. Aisha, organizations are trying to find the old normal, but
Mhm.
your research suggests that doesn't exist anymore. Uh, how can HR manager use your findings to design a collaborative environment that doesn't rely on everyone being physically in the same room?
Mhm. Thank you for your question. Yes, that's really a very important question, not only in terms of my research, but also if we look at the current context, that because the businesses are emphasizing on mandating return to office, that's mainly because of the collaboration, productivity, or innovation related issues, right? So how can then this collaboration can be improved, or particularly what the HR departments can do? So one major idea here can be the shift from the, like earlier we used to think that you'll have to come to the office, and because you are
Mm,
coming to the office because of your in-person presence, your productivity is actually dependent on your in-person presence. But nowadays we are moving out of that idea because of the extensive telework we had, right? So here we need to move towards the outcome-based performance management system, or like the result-driven performance management system, where we should not emphasize on the factors like if you are present in the office or not.
mm,
Instead, what is important is that what I am producing, how much I am producing, and
mm,
is that of high quality or not? Okay. So if I see that there is no issue in terms of productivity, that a task has been assigned to an employee and the employee or their colleagues can or their team can actually produce that kind of outcome, they can, if they can fulfill the expectations in that sense, it really doesn't matter from where they are actually working. And nowadays we are actually seeing this shift towards, I don't know if you follow Prithviraj Chaudhary,
mm,
who was earlier a Harvard University professor and now who
mm,
is in London School of Economics. So
mm,
Prithviraj Chaudhary is one of the pioneer in this idea of work from anywhere concept. Like
mm,
he even has a book on work from anywhere. Like it's not only about work from home. I can
mm,
literally work from a very decentralized location, maybe
mm,
from Asia. The
mm,
organization can be a North American organization. It really doesn't matter. The employees
mm,
can be from all over the world. In fact, you really do not
mm,
need to sit in front of your colleagues to
mm,
perform the task.
mm,
So that's the shift that we need to see. We need to
mm,
establish the clear formal telework policies.
mm,
How many hours the employees need to work from home versus, I wouldn't say work
mm.
from home nowadays. I would say this is work from anywhere, because
Yeah,
I literally can be anywhere. I can be in
yeah.
fact on a beach, I can be on
Mm,
a restaurant, I can
mm,
be at my kids' school, but
yeah,
still I'm working, right?
yeah, yeah.
And that is increasing the productivity significantly, because you are constantly working. Even if you are not working, you are thinking about your work, so your brain is working, see. But when you are going in person office, your brain is literally working from 9 to 5, not beyond that, because once you are done, you are done. You don't
Yeah,
really bother about your work.
yeah.
That's the point the leaders or the
Mm,
managers are missing. And that's why they
mm,
need to have some clear communication, collaboration
mm,
related
mm,
policies.
mm,
I also emphasize on specific kind of training program for the
mm,
managers. So for example, the managers must have training on remote leadership,
mm,
that even if the manager is not present at the office, the manager and also their team are dispersed in different geographic location, but still, how can you manage your team? That's something the managers should learn first
mm,
before actually starting to delegate the work to the team members.
yeah,
Okay, so
mm,
we should actually have some specific policies and programs in
mm,
HR department which should
mm,
think beyond the box.
mm,
And that box is office actually. That is not only
mm,
about working in the
mm,
office. It's about how we can improve the productivity and
mm,
how we can also keep our employees happy at the same
mm.
time.
Yeah. Aisha, your work has moved the needle on how we understand telework paradox. But
Mhm.
as any researcher knows, a PhD often uncovers as many as new questions as it does answers. For a student just starting their doctoral journey, perhaps someone looking to build on your work, what are the missing pieces in remote work that you think are most worth exploring next?
Thank you. I would suggest that if someone starts to work in this specific area, because we already had a significant amount of research,
Mm,
specifically in the area of telework, we are still doing research, and and what they need to actually focus is that if we can have this integrative idea of conducting our research, specifically if this is possible to include all the variables that I mentioned earlier, that the demands and the resources, or specifically when you talk about telework paradox, why can't we resolve the telework paradox? Because there is no one single variable or factor that actually explains the whole situation.
mm,
So to explain the paradox or to resolve the paradox, we need to include all kinds of variables in a in a very ideal kind of environment or a situation that where it's possible to include the personal variables or the individual variables, the organizational variables, the job related characteristics, the leaders, the managers, everything, to just to see a holistic research model, or to see that how, if we include everything together in a single model, then what happens,
mm,
because we have done this isolated research. So some scholars have focused on the individual factors, some researchers have focused on the organizational factors, but we do not see an integrative kind of research, which is important. But I
mm,
also understand that this might be very complicated because of resource limitation.
mm,
It needs definitely, a lot of, I would say that it needs fund. Also, it needs a lot of time. Specifically, the survey questionnaires might be very, very long, which the
mm,
participants may not be interested to
mm,
participate in, right?
mm,
But then the question is that then how can we actually have this holistic idea about the paradox? How can we resolve it? So there should be more research on how should we resolve the paradox.
mm, mm. That's a great way to look at it, Aisha. Now you have completed your PhD. What is next for you personally and professionally?
So I am still a contract faculty at York University, but apart from that, yes, definitely I am conducting my research. I am finishing some incomplete projects which I didn't have time when I was a PhD student.
Yeah.
So now I have some time to finish those, and then also I'm very excited that I have recently started working on my own business.
Mm,
So I have started to work on my consultancy business or HR service oriented business, so which I will be launching very soon.
mm,
So these are some background work that I'm still conducting. So you need to stay tuned to know more about that. But yes, that is something that I now see as my future career beside teaching and research, of course. So because I see that it's not only about, conducting research, but I also want to implicate these
yeah.
connect this research findings with the
Mm,
industry at the same time, that if
yeah.
this research can actually benefit the industry or not, or the organizations,
Mm,
right? So
mm,
that's my focus right at this moment.
mm. Wonderful. Aisha, thank you for joining us and giving us a roadmap to navigate the telework paradox. Your work reminds us that behind every innovative idea is a person balancing work, home, and collaboration. We wish you the very best in your next chapter.
Thank you very much. It was nice to talk to you and also share my research findings on Telework Paradox. I hope it will be useful for the younger scholars specifically who are starting their PhD and who also want to conduct research on telework in future.
Thank you, Aisha.